If your family owns heirs property, there are a few things that I need for you to do as soon as possible. First thing I need you to do is to go to the property, visit the property. A lot of times people have family land, it's been in the family for multiple generations. They've been paying the property taxes on that property, but no one has actually laid eyes on the property in several years. I encourage you, if you own family property, if you own heirs property, go visit that property. I want you to walk the entirety of that property. You need to understand where your boundary lines are and walk those boundary lines. Make sure that there are no fences from your neighbors that are encroaching on that family property. You want to make sure there's no buildings that might be going overflowing from your neighbor's property into your property. Make sure people are not dumping trash and hunting on your property, cutting your trees even without your permission. You want to walk that property on a regular basis. Make sure somebody goes out there at least once a year, at least, to lay eyes on it. Make sure there's no trespassing. Make sure there's no damage being done to the property, no encroachment by the neighboring property owners. Second thing I need y'all to do, which is very much tied to the first thing, in fact, it's something you got to do before you can even do the first thing, and that is to make sure you have an up to date boundary survey for your property. Boundary surveys are good to do at least once every 20 years. And the reason why is because things happen over time. One thing that happens is that the way that they surveyed property 20, 30 years ago could be different from the way that they survey property now. Technology has improved. There's now, instead of them, they used to use these chains to actually measure the boundary lines to measure distances between points when they're doing the boundary lines. They would use chains to do that. Now they have technology to help them do it. They have computers and little laser things, stuff that I don't know what it's called. Maybe I need to find out what it is. But land surveyors have much different equipment these days to help them to measure out boundary lines. And a lot of families are surprised when they actually compare what they understand the boundary of their property to be to what the surveyor says that it is. A lot of families are surprised. They either find out that the land surveyor has measured less property than the family thought they had. Sometimes they find out that the land surveyor has measured more property than they thought they had. But it's important that you get that done, because if there is any dispute, you need to go ahead and address it as quickly as possible. You don't want to let too much time pass, because then your neighbor who sees your boundary lines is completely different than the way you see them. They may feel as if, even if the old survey say one thing, they had their own survey done, and they had their survey done long enough to now they believe that their survey is what describes the actual boundaries of the property. So I want to just kind of go back and repeat that in a sense. When someone is when people have deeded property to folks, when they did this years ago, they use all kinds of ways to measure the boundary lines. They may have used those chain links that I talked about, but sometimes they would say the oak tree to the fence post to the rock in the river to my neighbor's house. A lot of times, the ways that they describe property back in the day, they would say to the east of John Doe's property, to the south of Susan Doe's property, to the north of Mr. Bean's property, whoever it is, they would name the boundary lines of the property based on who the neighbors were. And as you can imagine, those neighbors move, they die. And so we can't just continue to rely on those old ways of describing property. I'm gonna have to go more in depth on these things in the future, but generally, what I'm telling you now is that the way that they measured land years ago is very different from how they measure land today. And if you want to make sure you have accurate and up to date understanding of the boundaries of your property, you need to get a boundary survey redone if it's been more than 20 years, especially if your community has changed. So you may have been in a very rural community in the past, but now your property may be in a developing community. You may have commercial property around you. Things have changed, and so you need to get a new boundary survey to make sure that it lines up with the current circumstances of your world. And it can update your neighbors, who the neighbors are now, and there's much more precise measurements to help you to see what actually are the boundaries of your property. A lot of times people say folks have moved pins and they've done this, they've done that to alter people's boundaries. The only way you know if something has changed is if you get your own boundary survey done at least once every 20 years. And going back to that first thing, that you walk the boundaries of your property. Another thing that I want to tell families who own heirs property is that you can't rely on what the tax office says to determine who owns your property. The tax office may say that Susie Q owns this property, but they may be going off of the fact that Susie Q is the last person who paid taxes on the property. Or perhaps in the case of heirs property, maybe one of the heirs transferred their interest in the property to someone else. The tax office is looking at the most recent recorded deed, or they're looking at the most recently recorded affidavit. They're not necessarily looking at who the actual owners of the property are. And a lot of times people come to me and say, "Hey, Attorney McClendon, the tax office, the what did they say, like the state or the county, they changed the ownership of my property." No, they didn't change the ownership. It may say owner, but what they changed is who they have documented as the owner of the property in their records. Or they might just be listing the person who is the responsible party when it comes to taxes in their records. So the tax office doesn't always line up with what's in the county land records. The only way you can determine who is the actual owner of property is to do a title search. And when I say title search, I'm not meaning to go to the deed room and search for a deed. I'm saying that there is a process that attorneys and title abstractors follow to make sure that they have properly searched the land records and documented the chain of title. So that's all I'm going to give y'all right now, so this video doesn't get too long. But if you enjoyed this video, if you got something from it, I encourage you to like this video, subscribe to my channel, share this with someone who needs to know it, and let me know in the comments what else y'all want me to talk about, what's going to be helpful to you all as you navigate your family's heirs property journey. Thank y'all for tuning in. I'm attorney Veronica McClendon, the family land lawyer. Y'all take care.